Okay, so I kind of just want to do this video on just like different topics that are kind of universal, just different things that everybody can get into. So I think in our culture, one of the things that we've really latched onto is this kind of modern self-help movement, and a lot of that is language that's communicating self-love, right? Love yourself. You hear that a lot. And so what that means is, you love yourself and you make sure that you take care of yourself and that you're well off and everything. And, you give yourself breaks and everything. I think sometimes some of this messaging is usually kind of combined with this idea of being kind to other people. And so you hear about people like, you need to be kind, don't be mean and all this stuff. Well, I think part of that is it's not just being kind. I think what you need to do is you need to love your neighbor as yourself. You need to love your neighbor as yourself. What does that mean? Well, I think fundamentally everybody, to a certain extent, already does love themselves, right? They take actions in order to sustain themselves, and they do things that ultimately lead to a longer life, right? Now, of course, there's some people who do actually have issues with the fact of self-hate, and they have issues with that, and that's, a completely different matter altogether. But I'm commonly just talking about people that tend to have this idea of, just love yourself and make sure you take care of yourself. Well, couple that with this kindness concept, sometimes that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If everybody is just looking out for themselves, they're taking care of themselves and making sure that they're getting theirs, what ends up happening is that you do start to treat other people differently, right? Because you're trying to take care of yourself. So sometimes what that can look like is you are trying to assert your wants and desires. And so when you pursue those things for yourself, try to make yourself happy, you end up making somebody else unhappy. Of course, this doesn't happen all the time. So I think just this concept of love your neighbor as yourself. Well, who's your neighbor, right? Well, your neighbor, is it the guy down the street, who's like old and you don't know him and he's like kind of creepy, is that your neighbor? Well, yes and no. Your neighbor is anybody. Anybody is your neighbor. So what it means that you love them as yourself. Well, think about the things that you would do for yourself, right? Think about the things that you would want. That's not very common. Everybody kind of wants to focus on themselves and they want to say, oh, well, I'm just going to take care of me. But if you actually take the effort to take care of somebody else, then really I think that you're trying to make sure that everyone else is not just, quote unquote happy, but they're actually thriving. They're better off. So you think about the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? We always hear the phrase the Good Samaritan. Well, what does that mean? Well, in biblical context, the Good Samaritan was somebody who was on the lowliest of lows of the social hierarchy, right? Very much so a second-class individual. But if you, read this parable, it talks about how a priest and a Levitical priest passes them up. And instead it's this guy, and what does he do? This man was going down this road to Jericho, and he gets attacked, and he gets left for dead, essentially. And then you have these people who just pass him by. They don't do anything. And then you have a Samaritan comes along, he sees him, he takes care of him, and he takes him to an inn, and then he says he's going to come back later and actually, take care of him, right? So that's something that we need to be striving for, is to make sure that we are taking care of each other. That we're not just looking out for ourselves, right? Because we could go on our way. We could pass somebody up, right? We can go on our way and say, you know what, I don't really want to do anything with this. Somebody else will come along. Well, here's the thing. If everybody says, I'm just going to take care of me, somebody else will be the good guy. Somebody else will take that responsibility. If everybody thinks that, then nobody does it, right? If it's someone else's responsibility, it's no one's responsibility. They give the example as kind of like a common colloquial example of the balloons, right? And I'm probably going to butcher this illustration, but basically the balloon example is like you get a bunch of people together, they all write their names on one balloon, right? And they put all the balloons in one room, and then they would tell the people, hey, you go in there, you find your balloon that has your name on it. Nobody could find it. But then they came back out and they said, hey, help each other find your name. well, then everybody was able to find their name very easily and very quickly. So it's just an example. Love your neighbor. Make sure that they are doing well. Make sure that you're taking care of them, right? And it doesn't have to be super complicated, you know? It's like, you know, check in on people. Make sure they're doing well. Like if somebody needs a favor done, you know, sure, don't be creepy about it, but like help them with it, you know? Offer to help. And I think that's kind of the thing here in the United States especially, and I think generally in Western cultures, there's this push towards individualism. Just rely solely on yourself. And so there's no sense of community. There's no sense of belonging to a group of people that want to help you, right? So what do? You go to the companies that offer some kind of service, or you go to the government, right? The community can serve those functions, right? Like if you need to move someplace, you don't have to get a U-Haul truck or something like that. You can get people that you know. And of course, you know, today it's very hard because good people are really hard to find, but they exist, right? And I think the main lesson here is to be that good person. Be the good Samaritan. Be the person that is willing to to serve others. That's really what it boils down to. Be the person that's willing to serve others and to take time out of your day for somebody else. Because here's the thing. If everyone took time out of their day for somebody else, well, I mean, things would be a whole lot better, wouldn't it? Like, people wouldn't have to deal with things so much on their own. So, that's the lesson for today. Love your neighbor as yourself. So, serve others, make sure that they're well off, and don't just love yourself. Take care of yourself so that way you can take care of others as well. Alright, this was kind of an experimental video, what I'm doing. Leave a comment below your thoughts. And remember, God made you special. And He loves you very much. It's a VeggieTales reference. Goodbye.